Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, February 18th, 2021. And our top stories today, the investment advice exemption moves forward, and what additional regulations might we expect going forward? Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Kevin Welsh. He's a principal with Groom Law Group, an employee benefits law firm based in Washington, D.C. Kevin, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
I mean, it's great to see you, Jeff, but I know you got me in this week just so that I could apologize and say my fault. Normally, you have guests in when they can say their bold predictions were right, or there's been a change that they anticipated or that just came as a surprise to everyone. This week, you're having me on to talk about a surprise to me. But that I went out on what I thought was a pretty stable limb, and your viewers may have been misled by it.
Well, Kevin, as you know, this is all about education and information. So we don't hold or, we don't keep track of right, wrong. I think what you and David do every day, I've got
a scoreboard right next to me.
Yeah, well,
right next to me, keeping track of my predictions and David.
Just to be clear, what you and Kevin do every day with your clients and also coming on the show, that more than makes up for maybe being half right occasionally. So let's jump in. I know you want to talk about the investment advice exemption, some developments there, as you said. Forget the mea culpa. Break it down for us.
I do. So the big news this week is that the Biden administration, the new Department of Labor, they have decided to allow the investment advice exemption that was finalized during the Trump administration take effect as scheduled on February 16th, 2021. And I and others, and maybe not you, Jeff, were very surprised that, the Team Biden, was able to quickly look at the Trump rule and say, we support this Trump rule. We're going to let it go forward. And some of the causes for surprise were, on day one, Team Biden released a memo saying delay all rules by 60 days. We're still inside 60 days. But it seems like this is the type of thing where, it adds investor protections. So Team Biden was able to look at it and say, this is a good thing.
Well, Kevin, I was going to just ask you, I know that many, including yourself, might be a little shocked, but what does this ultimately mean? Let's talk, can you just kind of explain what this investment advice exemption actually means for both our employer listeners and also our employee listeners?
So just talking about what the new exemption does. The new exemption, it allows for, brokers, financial advisors, and, insurance agents and others to make recommendations to retirement plans, to individuals in plans to roll out of a retirement plan, and to individuals with IRAs. And if they meet certain conditions, so they've got to satisfy impartial conduct standards, which require, for example, that the recommender not place his or her interests ahead of the retirement saver. If you meet certain disclosure requirements, if you acknowledge fiduciary status, if you do kind of a whole host of things, then you're allowed to be paid for your recommendation. Notwithstanding the fact that you're a fiduciary in making the recommendation. So what it does is it basically provides a way for, professional advice services to continue, or for professional advice services to be delivered to retirement savers, because, in the absence of an exemption, if someone is a fiduciary and they're getting paid based on the advice they're giving, then, ERISA says that's problematic. So this is a big deal because it provides a pathway to providing advice while being paid.
Now, Kevin, it's conceivable that the Department of Labor and the other regulatory bodies could do more than this in the future, right? So just because they let a rule go through because they agree with it or some piece of it doesn't mean that, things aren't just carved in stone and you can't address them later on. And there's a history of doing this, right?
Yeah, well, and even if it was carved in stone, you could still see moss develop. And here, I think we'll see moss develop pretty quickly. In the release where they said they were going to allow the rule to go forward, the Biden administration said, we do plan on providing some color on this through, maybe FAQs to, put their spin on the regulatory text that was finalized by the Trump administration. And even beyond that, if it turns out that this isn't getting the results that the Biden administration wants, if retirement savers aren't getting high quality advice, you could see changes being made to other rules, related rules. This rule was designed to harmonize pretty closely with what we saw out of the SEC last year, almost 2 years ago now, with regulation best interest. So really, I think Team Biden is taking a wait and see approach to see if these regulatory reforms that were designed to heighten the standard of care around retail advice work before possibly making changes of their own.
Yeah, I think it's a good sign, and it's nice to see that retirement and investment advice can be bipartisan issues. Kevin, I want to take a very quick break, but when we come back, we'll talk about what else could be in line on the regulatory front. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate copays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. Look, with the uncertainty of the virus and vaccines, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Here's the bottom line. Call to get significant benefits at no additional cost and see if your zip code has coverage with the Give Back benefit. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-924-3920. That's 1-800-924-3920.
Welcome back. We're talking to Kevin Walsh of Groom Law Group. Kevin, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Oh, it's always good to be on. So, more time with you, Jeff, it makes it a better day on my end.
Well, I wish there were a lot of people who thought that way. But I appreciate that, Kevin. Kevin, you talked about this investment advice exemption. What might we also expect on the regulatory front? I know you and your colleague David Levine, the other half of the Legal Eagles, have often talked about ESG and some of the other rulemaking that was happening at the end of the Trump administration. But what from your eyes are you hearing and seeing that could be of being considered?
Yeah, so I think you hit the right topic there. I think the first big thing that we're likely to see in the retirement space is going to be proposals to make changes to rules related to proxy voting and environmental social governance investing. And the reason for this is, at the tail end of the Trump administration, last segment we talked about one rule that was finalized. Well, they got a whole host of rules done. For example, they got one done on, financial factors in plan investing, and that's been viewed as an ESG unfriendly rule because it places different parameters around investments that are based on pecuniary factors versus investments that are based on non-pecuniary factors. And so, there's some sense that we would prefer, or there's some sense that the Biden administration might like to prefer to allow for there to be some level of ESG investing in retirement plans, even if those investments, are non-pecuniary. So if they're not going to decrease risk, if they're not going to increase return of the investment. And that sense was magnified by, in last segment, we talked about a first day order. One of the documents that President Biden signed on day one actually told the Department of Labor, one thing I want you to revisit is your financial factors rule. So in the next 3 to 6 months, I would think that we'll see a proposal that revisits the financial factors rule and could facilitate greater ESG investment. Now, this rule is kind of a rule that has gotten a lot of attention among retirement lawyers because it seems as though every single time there's been a change of administration, it's ping-ponged from being more ESG friendly in Democrat administrations to less ESG friendly in Republican administrations and back again. So last segment we talked about the investment advice exemption and said that it turned out that they were able to release a rule in the tail days of the Trump administration that could stick into the Biden administration. I think we can only hope that new rules that the Biden administration does can be down the fairway, so that if there's a Republican administration in the future, people don't suffer from a constantly changing compliance regulatory environment. Go on.
I was going to say, Kevin,
so if you've got questions about this one.
I was going to say, because I was just going to infer that whenever there are regulatory changes, that there's cost associated for firms to comply, whether it's missing participants, whether it's ESG, whether it's something. There are rules that have to be implemented. That means systems, trading systems, record keeping systems, documentation, all those things. So that there's definitely a cost to that. Go ahead, Kevin. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you weren't interrupting at all. And Jeff, I mean, we've got 7 minutes here. If you get me going on missing participants, I'd blow through the end time.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, but I don't want to. Before we get to MPs, because I know that's near and dear to your heart. Any other things that we need to be thinking about? Because I do want to give you some time for missing participants. Because all kidding aside, really important that we can identify and connect people with their money, almost like a Bumble dating service for your 401k money.
That's an idea, a Bumble dating service for your 401k money, Jeff. So I guess the other two things that are worth talking about, just real briefly, related to ESG investing, you also have proxy voting, which is essentially the idea that, as a shareholder, you have a right to influence the decisions by, corporate boards. And similar to saying, you can't make investments based on your non-pecuniary beliefs. The Labor Department in the waning days of the Trump administration said you also can't, exercise your shareholder rights in the interest of your beliefs unless they're going to, help the plan's participants in a financial way. So we could see that the Biden administration is likely to take a second look at that. And then we talked MEPs and PEPs for 2 years now since Secure. And as of January 1, PEPs are operational. But really the only guidance we have is how to register as somebody who wants to run a PEP. There's a whole host of things that we're still waiting for, like a model PEP document or guidance related to, the framework around, using affiliates as PEP service providers. So I think everyone is hoping, but has at least given up on holding their breath, that we'll see some of this guidance soon.
Well, I hope you're right, and I think we have talked with your colleague David Levine and others about some retirement legislation. So I'm very bullish on 2021 being the year of retirement. Not that we're all going to retire, but that we're going to focus on people's financial security and independence. Kevin Walsh, it is a complete and awesome pleasure to talk with you as always, and I want to wish you a great rest of your day and a great rest of the week. Thanks for joining us today, my friend.
Thanks for having me on, Jeff, and thanks viewers for watching.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our newsletter, The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.